Okay, now diving into the details about the worst parts, the least enjoyable parts about the job. Biggest one for people to wrap their head around is the lack of schedule visibility. Honestly, when you go into the office at the beginning of the day or when you start the day off, you kind of have a sense of what you're going to be working on, but you never really know because sometimes there are last minute things that come up and you may ask, why is this the case? Why is it that you don't really know what your schedule looks like? Why is it hard to predict what a typical day is? And the answer to that is because someone else's emergency becomes your emergency. What I mean by that is if a client all of a sudden wants something, they, let's put together a valuation deck, or there's a board meeting coming up and we've just been brainstorming some ideas, like what's your advice? Or they're like, what are some alternatives to our current capital structure? They will probably go to your managing director or someone who is affiliated with your team. And when they get that request, even though it's last minute, your managing director gets that obviously is going to translate to you. You're going to be working on these materials. Quick story time, this has actually happened to me before. It was Friday, like 4 or 5 p.m. before Labor Day weekend. I thought that weekend was going to be fairly free. I didn't make any specific plans, but I had kind of thrown out some ideas with friends and family. Well, at around 5 or 6 p.m. that evening, we get an email from our managing director saying, hey, the client wants to see something by Monday for a meeting on Tuesday. I'm sorry this is going to blow up your weekend, but it is what it is. Let's get on a call in an hour. It happens. And sometimes it happens more often than not. So for analysts, it's really hard to kind of grapple with that, especially when you're trying to make plans on the weekends. You want to hang out with your friends. You want to have a social life or be able to plan. You won't necessarily have that structure. You're still going to have to put your job first and work everything around that. You may have to cancel on plans, you may have to postpone things once in a while, but it's just all part of the job, and having this expectation set before you start is really important. Holidays, days off, it's really contingent on what you're currently on in terms of projects. My thought process was always just assuming you weren't going to have those days off, so then you're either right or you're pleasantly surprised. I know that's probably not the best mentality to look at it, but it really helps with like, oh, I deserved this and I thought I was gonna have it. And instead of just being like, okay, well, I signed up for this. I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew I was going to have holidays that weren't true holidays. I knew I was going to have to sometimes postpone my vacation because a live deal came up and I just had to change my plans because they couldn't restaff it. It just happens and it's just part of being on the job, and it does get better as you move up the ladder, but just keeping in mind that you've made the decision to put this career first. It will take up most of your hours and a lot of the times it's unpredictable. Another thing to touch on is being at the bottom of a totem pole in an industry that is extremely hierarchical. What this means is that it's very clear where people are in terms of positioning and how much power they have. Managing director, or ED, which is executive director, VPs, vice presidents, associates, and analyst. Some organizations are very flat. Investment banking is definitely not one of them. If there are people who ask you to do things, typically your answer is always, yes, will do, that works. At the same time, you have to learn about when to push back, because sometimes there will be asks that are unrealistic. They're asks that will definitely not meet the deadline, or asks that just simply don't make sense. For the most part, you do what people tell you to do. At the same time, protect your own, be able to pick your battles. No one is right to push back. You need to always be thinking about what you're working on, what's on your plate. So when something new comes in and say someone tells you to do something that is not realistic, you know why it is and you're able to manage that. So that's what I kind of talked about when it comes to managing people, managing work streams. You can't say yes to everything. And if you do, you're going to be burned out very, very quickly. Or you're just not going to be able to deliver quality things. So learning when you should and shouldn't and the right timing for those things is very important. Additionally, as an analyst, you'll be doing a lot of the grunt work. Sometimes that it can be very tedious. There are some things that are just admin work, just spreading comps or putting together profiles, or things that just take a long time just for, let's say, like a single page, or to put into a chart that may end up getting killed in the end. So on a weekend, like putting something together, you show it to your seniors, and maybe it helps them make a decision, and that decision is to not include it because it doesn't support their thesis or their story. It does happen sometimes, and I think it seems like it was for nothing. Like, it is a learning experience. Next time you learn how to do it faster, And the most important part is you showed it to someone, an important decision maker. The long hours tends to translate to you putting work above everything else, including your health. You don't get a lot of sleep in this industry. Your hours are very much tied to people's asks, and not only do you work long hours, you're constantly on your phone, constantly on call. Yeah, it can get overwhelming sometimes when you've been working consecutively for weeks and weeks at a time. And I think it's just really important to have this stoic mentality about it. Maybe that's not the right adjective to describe it as, but just knowing that there is something at the end of the tunnel, that this is just only temporary, but also just doing like small things to make sure you're staying healthy and you are taking care of yourself. This can come in the form of just making sure you're eating healthy. Even like a 20-minute workout is better than none. Making sure you're getting some sunlight at the end of the day. Thank you for tuning in to this investment banking series video. Hope to make more like these in the future, and I will talk to you next time.